This is Power Athlete Radio. With your hosts, Denny K, Professor Booty, and the Luke Summers. And now, toes forward, hips locked, shoulders set, and retract those scapulars. It's time for some knowledge bombs.
Thanks for tuning into Power Athlete Radio. No one knows strength and conditioning at the college level more than Jim Steele. This episode, the University of Pennsylvania Director of Sports Performance takes us through his journey of acquiring nearly 30 years experience working with a diverse spread of athletes. We kick off the podcast by talking about some of Jim's major influences throughout his life and what fueled his passion for lifting weights. With a training partner and spotter like Kurt Kowalski, you have no choice but to get stronger. Jim talks about his experience training for various performance goals like powerlifting, bodybuilding, Muay Thai, and even tough man competitions. We get the opportunity to pick Jim's brain about seeing athletes make the transition from high school to college athletics. He shares his opinions on having kids specialize at a young age and the consequences of doing so. We also get into how to maintain a good rapport with sport coaches and his approach to training female athletes. Training is just one facet of Jim's life. As an avid reader, author, and poet, he is the epitome of a well-rounded coach who is constantly seeking self-improvement. Not only that, he is the only knife fighter that I know in real life. A public fundraising campaign to create a second Super Troopers movie made a call for action, and the people have spoken, to the tune of nearly $4 million. All I can say is, Mother of God. Stay tuned because episode 103 with Jim Steele is happening right now.
What's happening, Power Athlete Nation? Welcome to another episode of the premier podcast in strength and conditioning, Power Athlete Radio. I'm here with John, Callie, and Tex, and our guest today is Jim Steele. He's the head strength coach at the University of Pennsylvania, and he has about 30-plus years in the iron game. Jim, thanks for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Glad to be here.
You know, we do have one other...
Jim, the man of steel.
Jim the Animal Steel. Yeah.
Jim the Animal Steel, going back to George the Animal.
Yeah.
Old
but
school.
I think they all had E on the end of their name. We're the real Steels, no E on the end.
Jim, did your name motivate you to become strength and conditioning coach?
No, but that's not the first time I heard that. Usually when they give tours through the weight room, they're like, and our strength coach is named Jim Steele, and yes, that's his real name. So it's like a good icebreaker, I guess. Yeah.
It's kind of like the fullback, Max Strong. Max Strong, by far the best name of any fullback or any football player I've ever been around.
Well, my son's name is Maximus Steele, so that's really cool. Because one of the volleyball girls named him, actually. I was like, I got to figure out a name for my son. And she was like, how about Maximus? I was like, you got it. Perfect.
And for any Simpsons fans out there, that is from the Max Power Trent Steele episode. That is
Trent Steele.
Max Power's longest and dearest friend. Where'd you get your name? From a hairdryer.
I'm lost now.
Yeah, exactly.
Luke's a big Simpsons fan. So.
He's a 90s child.
Okay.
I'll tell you what, and ever since that app came out, you can watch every Simpsons you ever want.
Hey, Jim, how long have you been at the University of Pennsylvania?
February of '99 was my first year. I started off, It was just Rob Wagner was the head strength coach, and I was his part-time assistant. And then he left after a few years, and I moved up, and been here since then. Long time.
Dude, that's ironic. I went to Philadelphia and was drafted. My first year there was '99, so I frankly lived like right across the river from you, right across the Schuylkill River.
Yeah.
And we never met. This is the first time we're meeting. It's so unfortunate.
Right. How about Philly as an Eagles town, man? How is that? I mean, are they crazy here or what? Did that take a while to get used to?
You know what? It was exciting because when I got there, the Eagles were pretty shitty coming off the Ray Rhodes years, and so people were like these diehard fans that were like against you. So it's like, we love the Eagles. I got an Eagles tattoo, and I hate you. So people were pretty aggressive.
Who was your head coach?
I was drafted by Andy Reid. So Andy Reid first year.
Yeah.
So I came in, and so there was this like new idea of like renewed, and we were going to be better. And then that first year we came out, and I think the only bright spot was we beat the Rams in the last game.
Right.
And they basically sat everybody because they wanted to win the Super Bowl. So they sat everybody. We came in to beat them, and everybody said, "Well, we beat the Super Bowl guys." So at least we're moving along. And then that next year we came back and played pretty well and had many playoff appearances and 3 NFC championship games.
Yeah,
and got to the Super Bowl and all that. So it was pretty positive. What's hilarious is the weight room. When I first went to Philly, it was in Veterans Stadium and was such a shithole. It was a broom closet. We had Tommy Canady, who was Wolfie's assistant, on a couple months ago, and we were reminiscing about it. It was so bad, they didn't have any free weights when I first got there, and so there was the gym that was right down the street from my house. I mean, literally, I would like come out. I think I'd walk down 19th Street. I would go up on the on Walnut, and there was like a bodybuilder gym, like a powerhouse gym or something.
Oh, powerhouse, okay.
Yeah, and that's where I would actually lift weights. So I would go train there, and then I would go home, get something to eat, and I'd walk over to that powerhouse gym, and that's where I'd squat and lift free weights.
Heck yeah, man. Yeah, there's some good gyms in Philly, Jersey, Philly. They're good lifting areas, Where I grew up was real good too.
Yeah, Iron Sport. My buddy RC owned a tattoo parlor right in Folsom, right down the street from Iron Sport. So we stopped in there on occasion.
Is Philly like liquor store, tattoo parlor, gym, Steve's cheesesteak, and then it just like alternates?
There's a lot of sandwich shops.
Sandwich
There's a lot of sandwich shops.
Yeah.
Like if you're into like
Cheese Whiz.
I'm not a Cheese Whiz guy, but
I think you just like shuddered for a second. Does that remind you of a trip to Philly?
Well, if you've ever seen them at the places open the cans that just say Whiz on them, it's like a white label in black that just says Whiz.
It's like communist food that just says like.
And they like open it up, and it might be from 1963 or it might be next week. Or nobody knows.
The freshness level, the same.
The same. And then when they like scoop that stuff out, I remember one of the first times we went there. It's like a new thing. You have to take people there just as like a tourist deal. Kind of like taking people to Disneyland on a hot day, and they're like, "Why did you bring me here?" You're like, "Good, you got dominated."
Yeah, so much just depression immediately after. Yeah.
It works for job interviews too.
What's that, Tex?
It works for job interviews too.
Yeah, Jim, we were talking a little bit before the show. You were talking about like having someone on staff for a little bit, not just having a 3-hour job interview. So one of the stories we like to tell in the podcast is one of John's interview segments for Callie and Tex was in Philly, and I'll just let you take the story from here.
So, like I said, we had the seminar up in the KOP. So these guys come into Philly, which is King of Prussia for those of you guys that aren't from that area. And I, of course, was like, hey, these guys are driving up from DC. This is really their first job interview and their first, experience kind of coaching and us evaluating them. One of my buddies, who's one of the chiefs for SEAL Team 4, drove up as well, and he was like, "Hey, let's see what Philly's all about. Let's go hit all the spots." And I was like, "Well, I'll put together like a little, like tour of the city, and we'll go hit all the best sandwich shops." So these guys show up, and I think they were a little bit nervous. And I think the first place we hit was Tony Luke's. When you go in there, and those of you guys know, Tony Luke's has like every sandwich. And as a rookie, part of my job was I had to go get sandwiches one day a week for the guys, and they would give me these fucking orders. And finally, like the third time I went in there, the guy that was behind the counter, I gave him the order. He's like, "You guys fucking smoking weed over there at the Eagles place?" And I was like, "Why?" He's like, "These fucking orders." He goes, "Who wants like it was like 27 things. I want potato, I want cheese, I want bacon, I want sausage, I want meat." Like guys were ordering off the wall shit just to try to make it hard on me.
They're busting your chops,
Yeah, it's like a rite of passage. So and this guy was like, "You guys fucking smoking weed over there?" So we take him over and hit up him, get him a bunch of cheesesteaks at Tony Luke's, and then we went to Nick's Roast Beef.
But here the thing is, I should cut in and say that I had no idea we were going to multiple places after this. This is all happened with zero eye contact as well. So I would just follow, and I wanted this job so bad that I was like, all right, like, cheesesteak, how hard could this be? I was worried that your SEAL team guys can, like, make us kill somebody, like, take out, like, a homeless person later or something.
Yeah, I mean, that was
You're like,
later.
we'll just see where that goes.
Yeah, we're just going to leave it open.
So I ate, like, a whole cheesesteak the first place. I'm like, yeah, all right, here we go.
And then we got in the car, and I tend to drive fast.
Yeah.
So... like imagine like
fast is an understatement.
Yeah, like you've seen Pulp Fiction when he's like the wolf. He's like, yeah, the wolf's on. He's like, it's 20 minutes away. I'll be there in 8.
Yeah, you're waiting outside.
That's our pattern. My driving is basically, and to drive in Philly, especially in South Philly, you either have to have lived there for a little bit or be pretty much brain dead because people drive the wrong way. They park in the middle of the street, and there's all these different things. And having lived there for 5 years, I'm just like making left rights.
Yeah, you know where you were going.
And these poor guys behind me are trying to follow me, and little do I know that Tex has the same driving skills of maybe an 87-year-old lady or older woman who's blind in one eye and missing a foot. Would you say it's accurate?
Well, the missing the foot thing, no, maybe not that, but definitely like 87-year-old. We used to call him Nana McQuilkin because of his slow driving.
I drive 2-footed, so I have both feet. I just use them both.
To be fair, I was pushing the Jeep Wrangler at the time, so it was my fault.
So we hit there, then we went to Nick's Roast Beef, and then we came back on the other side of Broadway, and I think we hit Pat's and Gino's.
You know, they do have museums and stuff like that here too, you know.
No, I never saw that.
Food, I love it.
Yeah, we just took them on.
So we went to one cheesesteak place, and then across the street was another one.
Yeah, that was the like third and fourth spot we had. We got a Pat's and a Gino's to have them do a comparison.
And I was like, when does the job interview start?
Dude, the best like the part right outside of my office. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, pretty much. And I don't think I took them down on South Street, but Jim's Steak would have been another one.
Yeah.
And the way that I got my first deal is I got invited. I don't know if I ever told you guys, but I was voted one of Philadelphia Magazine's best-looking people, 50 best-looking people.
Oh my God!
And part of my deal.
You tell us every Thursday.
Right. So part of my deal for getting voted as one of the best-looking people in Philly, I had to do like something for the magazine where they took us out on a tour of Philly and sampled all the cheesesteaks. So that's how I kind of got like to see all the.
Well, Philly is known for its good-looking people.
That's like being like the smartest person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, nothing.
No, I remember I was like they told me and the guy like gave me, he was all excited. I'm all, thanks. I would have liked to have been the best looking person in Orange County.
Like, yeah, you get it. Like...
Yeah, it's a tough town, but it was cool. I remember when I got drafted, I packed up my truck and my dad and I drove from Berkeley to Philadelphia, and it took us 49 hours.
Yeah.
We decided not to stop. Yeah, my dad was like, let's stop. And I was like, let's just keep going. And
just like Thelma and Louise, just straight there.
Yeah, just straight out. And as I'm driving on the expressway, all of a sudden I saw this huge sign right off South Street that said industrial lofts for rent. And I literally pulled off, called the number, and rented the place like 10 minutes later, and that's where I lived. And it just so happens that it was right across from Franklin Field.
You're so good looking. So Jim, let's get a little background on you. I mean, what's your journey been like? Tell us how you kind of got to the point that you are now. I mean, you said that you've been doing this you've been in the game for approximately 30 years, and at your current job since, what was it, 99?
Yeah, February 99, yeah.
So what brought you to that point? How'd you get to that level?
Oh, man. Well, I was always fascinated with lifting weights for football. My father was a professor at the University of Maryland, and his best friend was the head football coach, Jerry Claiborne. He's in the College Football Hall of Fame, played for Bear Bryant. And so they would play noontime basketball or tennis every day. So I knew Coach Claiborne really well. But I basically had carte blanche as a little kid to go in any practice I want. Or in the weight room, I would just sit there and watch these guys. Now, Maryland was one of the first teams to really start training with weights. I think it was Virginia Tech. And then Claiborne left Virginia Tech, went to Maryland, and brought weights with him. And so I would just sit there and watch all these all-ACC guys curl. I remember this one guy, it was Mark Duda, played for the Cardinals for a while, curling like the 100-pound dumbbells. I remember seeing guys, bench 405 for some reps. I mean, it was just really cool stuff. Mike Mentor came in there one time and worked out. So I was also always fascinated with lifting weights and football. And really, I did it just to get better at football. And, you do it, narcissistically too. But I was fortunate or unfortunate not to have great coaches, so I had to learn on my own. So I was always asking questions. I would go to these gyms and just talk to people. And tried every program. I did high intensity, I did bodybuilding, I did everything I could find, mostly muscle and fitness stuff and powerlifting USA. And so as I just continued playing football, I kept lifting, and actually people started coming to me for advice, like, what should I do? What exercises should I do to get stronger? Or what do you think of this exercise or program? So, it forced me to learn a lot really fast. Mm-hmm. And basically, you take what works and throw out what didn't. And then I, got into coaching. I never could picture not being around football and not being around weights. And so when I graduated college, I just started coaching. I volunteered, delivered pizzas and started coaching, So, I tell everybody always asks, well, how do you become a coach? I don't know. I just always wanted to do it. And I couldn't picture myself sitting in an office. I get to wear a T-shirt every single day and shorts, and you wear a collar on the sidelines, and that's about it, and get to work with young people and you see them grow. Yeah, I just couldn't picture it.
Yeah. Did you have anybody who kind of influenced you? I mean, you kind of touched on a few people there, but anybody whose ethos or coaching ethos or kind of training mentality really hit home with you and resonated?
Well, I mean, there's no question. My father's my number one influence, but I would say Randy White, who played at Maryland, was a god when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. And he would be around. He knew my father, not like best friends or anything, but knew of each other. And then I followed him when he went to the Cowboys, and I tried to do every single thing Randy White did. If he was dipping snuff, I was dipping snuff. If he had a certain hat, I was finding that hat. If he, and he played so hard, and he played, I had a highlight tape. I used to take Beta and take all the highlights, the best plays that he did. It wasn't always just a tackle. It was like a pass rush move. I played nose guard. It was a pass rush move or, a tackle that he made or, just running across the field after a guy or something like that. And I put all these tapes on a highlight tape, and I'd watch it over and over again. So Randy was a huge influence with me. And he was the first guy to do the martial arts where, Bob Ward was his coach. So I remember I watched NFL Today. We only had 4 channels. And NFL Today would come on. I'd rush out of church, get home to watch NFL Today, and they had a special on Randy White in like 1984. I was in high school, and they had him doing Thai kicks. Now they have Thai pads everywhere. Back then it was karate in America and maybe Taekwondo. No Thai pads. So I went to every karate store and found one pad that was like just a forearm pad, basically. I put it on my girlfriend's arm. I saw this video of Randy White kicking it.
Oh, this is going to go well.
And I said to my girlfriend, hold this, man. I was like 265, right?
Oh, my God.
I'm 5'10", 265. And I was like, just hold that. She's like, okay. So I kicked. Man, her arm was flying, man. I was like, how many reps you going to do? I was like, 100, I guess. I don't know, 100.
How many do you need?
How many you got?
It's pretty tough, though. We didn't last long after that, but she was pretty tough.
Oh, my God.
Fortunately, I've actually sort of developed a relationship with Randy lately because I interviewed him for Starting Strength about his training methods. It was really cool. And then I'm getting into some knife fighting stuff, and he's an instructor. So I texted him. I didn't know if he texted. I didn't know. And he texted me back, and he was super cool. He said, just call me. And I was in Dick's Sporting Goods, and I was like, I looked at my wife. I was like, he said call him. What do I do? She's like, how about calling him? And I was like, that sounds like a good idea. So I texted him, and I'm like, when should I call you? And he's like, right now. So, I got all my gumption up, went outside, sat on a picnic bench, and we talked. He was so freaking cool to me, man. A lot of times you meet people that you're disappointed in and they're cocky. He was just like this regular guy. I was like, I'm talking to Randy White. It's really cool.
That's super cool. So, I would love to segue into how do I combine these two? I mean, you have experience and a background in Muay Thai, and then you just made a reference to knife fighting, which I assume is some sort of competitive venture for some people. I don't know, other than pirates.
It's competitive, but it's definitely
lethal.
Yeah.
So I mean,
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead and just touch on like the kind of the background in fighting, and then where that influenced your training.
Well, besides just starting it a long time ago doing the kicks and stuff, I just get bored really fast with So anyway, I reached all my goals in powerlifting in 2001. I did some I squatted. I always wanted to squat 800, and I did 820. I always wanted to bench 500, I did 505, and deadlift over 7, I did 740. And then I was like, yeah, I don't feel like that's it. I had these goals.
Whoa.
So
when was that?
2001, I believe.
Whoa.
I think so,
That's legit. Nice.
Yeah, it was, there's a lot more people. My one of my spotters was Kirk Kowalski. He did 1,000 for 2, so I was like, so. But anyway, so.
I guess 800 is okay.
Yeah, he probably did like 800
Forget
set
it.
of jeans without a belt because he was kind of tired.
He did 800 for 5 with a belt on.
What a dick.
He's probably the best squatter ever to ever put weight on his back. Maybe him and Ed Cohn. But
yeah. And anyway, sorry for interrupting.
We grew up in we played against each other in high school. Kirk's a pretty good friend of mine. I had him come up. We have a lifting competition for the football players called the Iron Quaker. I know it doesn't sound too tough. I had him come out and squat for the guys before we started. He did 500 for 5 with like a little bit of a warm up, and this was like 4 or 5 years ago, and they went crazy. It was really cool. Having Kirk spot you while you're squatting is pretty motivational, But anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, so I went from lifting, and I was like, all right, I got to find something. So Philly's a great boxing town, so I went to. I had a trainer named The Wiz, Robert Hill, The Wiz, and he's sort of well known around here, and started boxing with him. And I was like, well, let me get back into Muay Thai. So I trained with some guys, and they're like, there's a fight up in North Jersey. You want to do it? So I did a fight up in North Jersey. I did a tough man contest. The best thing about the tough man is I got my nose broken and there's blood. I came back to the corner to The Wiz. He's old school. He had a frozen spoon, dipped in ice. He had for in case you got swelling. I was like, man, what are you doing with that spoon? And I come to the corner, and I was just, the guy shattered my face, and I was like, he said, how you feel? I said, how do I feel? I feel like crap. I said, tell me what to do. And he goes, well, you need to duck a little more than you're doing right now.
Wow, excellent
coaching. Thanks a lot, man. The bell's ringing. I'm going back out there. Duck. Yeah.
Did you take the frozen spoon and did you take the back of the spoon and push it on the like where the cuts were? Try to keep them down.
Well, that's what it was for, but no, we never got to the spoon.
But hit you in the face with it.
No, when I was young in box day, it was cold quarters. So if you got hit, they would take a cold quarter and they would press it on your face.
Yeah. So I did that, and then I'm just always looking for something, So I did some bodybuilding, which was, awful. I did that. I did 2 bodybuilding shows just last year.
Yeah, there's some pictures on the internet of his bodybuilding. So if you do some Google images, Google Jim Steele bodybuilding, there's some good stuff that comes up.
Perfect.
I just want challenges. So I was just thinking, what can I do for the kids, our athletes? That's fun. And then what can I do for myself? I would try it out first. It's the footwork, and I haven't done before. So when Randy said this stuff is great, I found a guy in Philly, Joel Levan, who comes over, and he's teaching me slowly but surely how to do this stuff, and it's really interesting. And I like the self-defense stuff, and it's some cool. I collect knives, so that's cool too.
Yeah. Hey, I'm curious with all of this varying experience and all this training variation. Just have you had a history of injuries besides, the broken nose? Obviously, I imagine that you've probably put your body through like the gamut.
Yeah, it doesn't feel great, but I had a couple of elbow surgeries, and I never had it. I had Osgood Slaughter's really bad, but I squatted since I was in like 8th grade. So even though I played nose guard. And back then you could hold a guy up and then cut him, and my ankles would constantly get screwed up, but I never had a knee issue.
Really?
Yeah, never had a knee issue. I had back surgery 2 years ago. I had a bunch of disc stuff, and the sciatica was brutal, man. So finally got that cut on. I got broken fingers. John knows all, but you get the tips of your fingers and your knuckles, and you get all these calcium deposits, and
but you seem pretty nonchalant.
The one thing that'll kill you the fastest is the couch, right? Isn't that what Henry Rollins says, I think?
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, part of my deal is that the guys that I've seen that have fared the worst after playing are the guys that stopped training.
Yeah.
So I had kind of this idea that like if I stopped or we kind of chilled out or didn't keep trying to push the goal, that the wheels were going to fall off, and when the wheels fall off, like there's no way you could fucking bolt.
Like my mantra, you got to be like a shark. If you stop moving, you die.
Yeah.
Sharks never. I can't.
That's your mantra.
Yeah. That's not. That's one of.
You're not moving
That's
right
one
now.
of them.
I've never heard that mantra before, and I've known you a couple of years.
Yeah.
Did you just make that up?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Just on the spot right now.
I like it.
I've been watching a little bit of Shark Week. Don't worry about it. So Jim, let's talk a little bit more about kind of your. I'm curious as to how you and John sort of know each other. I know you said it's through Rip or your Dr. Wagner.
Actually, I think the first interaction, I was trying to go back. I looked. I think you shot me an email after my 42 things I had learned or something. Along
Oh yeah, that was it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember we emailed back and forth.
Yeah, you don't write enough. Your stuff is really inspirational, man. I know you're busy, but that stuff is really great.
Yeah, I need to write more. It's just with all the other things we do,
with being so ridiculously good looking.
Best looking man in Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia.
Asterisk.
Oh man.
That's yeah.
So I emailed you, yeah, saying that was great.
Yeah, and that was nice. And I had, of course, known your name through Rip, and he had spoken about you. And obviously, as you know, when you get on the phone with Rip, you usually have to call him on his gym line because he doesn't pick up his cell phone. It's usually about 10 o'clock at night, and he's just getting ready to go lift some weights.
Yep,
So I try to explain to people that Rip keeps the worst hours. If anybody, he gets up at around noon, gets to the gym about 4, and usually starts training about midnight. I think when we went to dinner with him, we ate at like 3 o'clock or 3 a.m. It was fucking brutal.
I remember when I called him to interview me. He's like, yeah, I emailed briefly with him, and I think he has an AOL account still, but but he was like, how about sometime in the evening after work, like 4:15? I'm like, okay, 4:15, all right, after work in the evening. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I went down there, hung out with him. That was really cool. Jim Wendler and I did a seminar down there where people came in and we talked and they asked us questions and spent a couple days there. It was really cool. But went out to his house, in the middle of nowhere, man, which I love. And it was like a planetarium, there's no reflection from the city because there's no city.
Nice.
And, yeah, it was
his
really
stone
cool.
structure. He lives in a one.
Yeah, man, don't flush the toilet.
Are you serious?
So what he did is
I want to go to his house.
He basically, they poured concrete slab and he built forms
that
are about 36, 48 inches, and then had a truck come and they dumped composite mixed with water and some other I don't know what sand or something. He basically built these kind of concrete composite walls and then built a.
So this is a whole nother podcast, but you can use different hay or whatever composite stuff or broken down wood and shit
and then
that.
He has and then he collects rainwater and
oh my God.
A generator and it's fucking Spartan.
That's fucking awesome.
But he sleeps on a big ass bear skin.
Now he does not.
I swear to God. And
he does not
the best
sleep
part
on
is
bear
Rip's entire house is you can tell that no child has ever been there because there's just knives and
sharp things,
and whiskey everywhere. A wall of whiskey. There's a wall of whiskey in his house. Yeah.
It was these nasty little short barreled shotguns. There was I'm picking up these hatchets. There's this chainmail over here. There's a mace.
Sounds like a dungeon.
I'm like, where are we? This is fucking Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got the Viking thing going on.
Well, Jim, let's get back to kind of your line of work because I know a lot of our listeners are coaches themselves. Tex also has a ton of experience coaching at the high school and collegiate level in terms of the strength and conditioning aspect, working with teams and that dynamic with the sports coach. Tex, do you want to kind of kick off a few questions that we typically see from our coaching standpoint?
Definitely. So first question I have is, how do you constructively approach sport coaches who try to force certain conditioning or things they want to see in the weight room into your program?
Well, I've learned over the years, you gotta listen to everybody, and some ideas are actually worthwhile. I think, you put your foot down when it's not safe for the kids. So if, somebody wants to finish up with band pulls or something, or tricep push downs with a band or on a rack or something, and we've already done our squats, deadlifts, presses, and cleans, okay, that's no problem. I try to explain to a lot of the coaches, how important strength is. And then as far as conditioning, I think over the years, now everybody's learned a little more, as far as even if you're not a strength coach. The problem with that is some of the things you learn aren't so great. But conditioning-wise, I always try to explain, well, I don't think you want to do that long distance running because that's not in the energy system that you're going to play. And try to explain everything with science. And the coaches are pretty smart here. They usually get it. Now, of course, I've been in other places where, well, if the national team does this, we have to do it. I was like, where's the national players on your team? Certain people, and John, you've played with those guys that can come in anytime they want and bench 450 or whatever. Those are the freaks of the world. They can do anything training-wise and get good. So if you use pros and top-level people as your models, a lot of times that's not the best way to do things. So you just try to explain to them scientifically, and you give and take. You can't give on the basics, though. Everybody squats here. Everybody cleans, everybody deadlifts, or a variation of some of those things. But really, those are the things you can't give on, and you can meet halfway on some of the gimmicky stuff. We try to finish with competitive stuff. They love that. We do everything from wheelbarrow races. We just got a bunch of sandbags, just anything to keep it competitive and fun. Coaches like that.
Jim, I call that the curse of the gifted, and we used to talk about that all the time, and especially at the seminar, I go into extensive kind of length with this, where it's like you can't look at the best athletes in the world.
Right.
And literally, I just made this point the other day. We taught one in Sacramento. I'm like, I played with guys that ate chicken McNuggets for every meal and Diet Cokes and were 3% body fat. I played with a guy, Brian Waters, who literally sat on the couch, didn't lift weights for 6 months. And I know because when he came back, he was fat and shit. Laid down and repped out. Like, I think he was like, 525 for 5, like it was nothing.
Jeez,
it was
man.
like, I think it took all 5 seconds. I mean, it was like boom, 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 and he wrecked up. He goes, "What you got?" I'm like, "I got that," and believe me, I fucking haven't missed a day in 10 years. So these guys are absolute genetic freaks, and the problem is you run into a lot of these strength coaches that put out these programs, or like we've seen some higher, or what we would consider high-level coaches because they're training high-level athletes, and because they're training, and they have all these wacky fucking methods and bands and doing all this stuff about priming the nervous system. And then some kid looks at it and thinks, "Oh, that's what I need to do to get better." And I'm like, dude, you're taking a guy that is already so genetically gifted and is that 0.0001%. You can't look at what he did and think that if you do that, you
build
get
a
there.
whole
And
program on it. Yeah.
It's basically been the foundation of, I got into this thing kind of on accident, in that I was still playing, and then I got injured, had knee surgery, and that's when CrossFit hit me up about teaching my stuff to the CrossFit community. And went out and I was like, "Hey, this is what I did. But don't be foolish enough to think that if I tell you what I did, it'll work for you. So here's the best method that I've found for training beginners, which is basically Rip's linear progression." And anybody that hasn't done a linear progression should do linear progression, and anybody that's never lifted weights should do that linear progression, because once you get to the end, you basically reach that base level of strength that, like, even if you go away from the weight for 10 years, you come back to and get right back to.
Yeah.
So it's and what kind of pisses me off a little bit, and I'm sure you're in the same boat, is that people try to constantly evade the basics, or try to oh no, we don't need to do that anymore, we're going to do this, and it just ends up fucking everything up.
Yeah, and it's you see people say, "Oh, he's strong enough." No, he's not. No, he's not strong enough. No, well, what is too strong? We always talk about that. As a football player, when is he too strong?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, people try to get away from the basics because they don't like that uncomfortable feeling in the bottom of the squat when you feel like your head's going to explode, and you have to go to the most uncomfortable place on all these exercises to get really good and to get really strong. People avoid it. Path of least resistance, right?
You referenced long distance running, or longer distance, or inappropriate distances for conditioning, say field sport athlete who's a contact sport athlete, right? What are some other myths or trends that continue to be rampant in your typical college weight room that are just they're just not relevant anymore? People are holding on to kind of old school methodology just because their coach did it.
Well, see, now it's getting a little better because I think CrossFit has made everybody more aware of the Olympic lifts and stuff. But, a few years ago, the Bosu ball thing and the big inflatable ball thing, insanity, all that stuff, the amount of plyos those guys are doing in those videos and everybody getting hurt by doing that stuff.
Yeah.
Instead of just trying to get strong first. When you're strong, I always try to tell these people, when you're strong, all that stuff is easy.
Yeah.
When you're really strong. But they can't get off of the ball and squat 500. There's no way. But all that stuff comes and goes, man, and you just stick to the basics. Now, things have changed as far as programming, and I love programming and different ways of program thing, and there's a lot more information out there. But I don't know. It seems like, and I have a couple athletes that are like, oh, can we do CrossFit? And I'm not against anything, you're training, whatever you're doing, but I'm saying, for your sport, that's probably not the best thing in the world. I'm not a huge fan of high rep snatches and cleans. So, I try to explain that to them, but I don't, it's not like it's going to kill you if you do that once in a while, but that's a trend that you see.
What's unique about college and I guess definitely professional but higher end high school is you have athletic training staff that's pretty knowledgeable. And many gym owners or coaches who are just in the private sector don't have that opportunity. Can you talk about your relationship with the athletic training staff, the back and forth, and just kind of communicating about athletes' well-being and applying what they need
it's funny,
in the weight room?
Yeah. I mean, Eric Lodano is the head trainer, and he's my supervisor, but he's a pretty good friend of mine. And we literally, and he was texting me right before this started, I get the injury report every morning. Then the kids will come into the training room. I'll get a text about that. Make sure what's his name doesn't axial load today, and he's got his CSCS, so Eric understands that kind of stuff. And then I meet with the physical therapist, once a week. We have our doctors right here in Franklin Field, so our communication with the athletic trainers is excellent. I mean, we talk literally. I mean, during football season, there's probably not a couple hours that go by where Eric and I aren't communicating on something. A kid or a rehab protocol, something that we're going to do, for the injured kids during Sunday night practice. It's all the time. So I'm fortunate. I've heard some horror stories, but I think you have to work together today. I think it's such there's so many injuries now coming out of high school. Everybody's injured, and it's not just here. I mean, everywhere I've talked to, there's these injuries that I never even heard of before, compared to the quote unquote old days. So you have to have.
Do you think they're overuse injuries?
I think so. I think kids specialize at a young age. I think, I know I have kids that I know that they got the batting instructor, they got the, the year-round baseball, and they have all these personal coaches, and it's all baseball, or whatever sport, and they end up getting a shoulder injury, and they never even. Well, by that time they don't even want to play in college, man. They're burned out.
Right.
But you see a lot of that, and then you end up, I would say out of 85 active football players, probably 20 guys at least are on individualized workouts, and just because of injuries and surgeries and things like that, they bring a notebook in, and I actually write them out in a notebook, every day. I'll say, look what we did last time, and let's go from here, and just modifying programs, so you got to have the relationship. I'm fortunate because all that stuff, you can get hurt on the field here and walk into get an x-ray and walk to get a MRI, because HUP is right, Hospital University of Pennsylvania is right next to us, and sports medicine's in the field, so we're fortunate.
Usually the relationship with the trainer can be kind of a little bit tumultuous, I would imagine, with the strength coach, because a lot of those guys were pretty smart. They all went out and they got their CSCS, and they got kind of certified as strength coaches, but yet they're not actively teaching people to train lift weights. And it's, I remember when I was at Cal, we had a pretty good trainer, a guy named Mike Chaplin, and he actually owned a gym, and was a PT, was an ATC, was a strength coach, and had enough tools in his toolbox to actually understand and talk to you. Whereas some of the other trainers, even though they were certified in it, had never touched a weight in their life, and all of a sudden you're going in there. And I remember after I tore my ACL going and squatting, and one of the trainers being like, no, you can't squat below parallel. And then actually the doctor, the orthopedist, came and talked to me about all the reasons about that I should never squat below parallel.
Really?
I swear to God. And I remember...
assuming they were saying that even a healthy person should not be. No one should. Right, because there would be a situation where, some people maybe shouldn't if it causes some sort of
they felt... so I trained in high school with... powerlifter George Sangus.
Sure.
And it was like
marathon suits.
George. I basically 14 years old trained in George's garage, and he trained all the football players.
Really cool.
And so it was dude, if the comment was if you don't stand up and I can't see splinters in your butt, it wasn't deep enough. Right. And so like that was the mod I came out of, and then I hurt my knee, and then they're basically like you can't squat below parallel, and then those guys, and then that staff got fired, and they brought in Todd Rice, who was a pure Olympic lifting coach. And at that point, it was like I hadn't developed any of the musculature, the strength, the flexibility to squat below parallel, and he just fucking went sideways, and it took me over a year to be able to develop.
He dropped your weights way down, right, and got you.
I wasn't allowed to back squat. I only got to front squat. And then finally because I squatted 6'10" when I was 19.
Damn, dude.
And then I tore my ACL, and then I came back, and then I ended up front squatting 500, so 232 kilos. And at that point, I got to back squatting again.
What's cool is though that he also appreciated like the time that it takes. Like he was looking at you as like almost like a multi-year approach, right? So he knew what needed to happen. Todd Rice, right?
No.
He didn't.
No, he just said you're never effective back squatting.
Oh, he said. Oh, I thought the whole goal was to get you back to a position where you could.
No. He just basically said you're not allowed to bench press or do back squats.
Yeah.
So I had front squat press, and then I would go down to the RFC or the whatever, like the rec center after, and I would go bench press down to the rec center because he wouldn't let me bench at the gym.
But then it didn't take you very long to get back to your.
No, and then when we tested, I benched 500 pounds, and he was trying to tell me he was like really trying to tell me all the reasons why pressing helped my bench 500, and I was like, no, it was that called Louis Simmons and the West Side shit I was doing down at the rec center.
Oh, we're doing some West Side stuff?
Yeah, so I wanted to bench 500 pounds, and so that 96, I called Louis Simmons. We had the bench website videos, and at the end it's like it puts up the number, and so I went up to the office and I called, and Lou picked up, and I talked to Louis.
Dude, he's so cool. He'll call you back. He'll talk to you forever, man.
Yeah, and I mean, just some kid and want to bench 500. Well, here's what you do, and he put the program together, and it was like basically rotated close grips, floor press, and incline, and then did speed work, and then all this assistance. And he's like, when you can bang out, I think it was like the 150 dumbbells for a set of 20 or something, you'll bench 500. And so he told me to work triceps, and he laid out the program, and I was like, great. And then I did it, and ended up benching 500.
It's cool. He has he's seen so many people go through the process where he's like, you'll see an old man at the end, and when you get there, you'll bench 500.
Well, yeah, Louis like, you want to bench 500, you need at least 150 dumbbells. If you want to bench 525, you're going to need 180.
He's like,
if you want to bench 550, you're going to need 200-pound dumbbells.
Yeah. Well,
he's like, how big a dumbbell do you have? I'm like, I think we have 150s. He's like, you're going to need 500.
Going to need a bigger boat.
Yeah, and I mean, but so dude, I've been so fortunate with strength coaches in that I had, Zangus, when I was young, and then, a guy named Eric Cohen, and then obviously Todd Rice, which, thank God I got to go into a pure Olympic lifting program. And I credit him with a lot of the stuff, so I was really lucky.
Jim, I have a question for you since we're talking about numbers and benchmarks and things like that.
Yeah.
How do you navigate some of your athletes really focusing on their training as the training being the test versus performance on field being the test? Do you get athletes who come in there and it's all about how many reps they can do, how many times they can rep out 225 on bench? Does it ever swing to a position where that becomes the emphasis over application?
Or
is that ever a problem?
Yeah, you have some kids, that are really into lifting and aren't into the sport so much. And, I try not to focus on who's good and who's bad and just, make everybody really strong and fast and all that stuff. But, it's so much time involved. I think in the old days, see, our kids here, the academics is so huge. The time that they have to spend studying, the labs they have to go to, the tutoring and all that stuff. So even if you're really into it, you got an hour, man,
Mm-hmm.
So you got to do sort of just the program, and then they get their curls in, which they do every day no matter what, and then they're sort of out of here. And if they do stuff on their own because they're into bodybuilding or whatever, they may do that, but it's not. I think I've seen a little decline in that where somebody's just really into lifting and compared to the years past.
Mm-hmm.
And it may just be here because it's Ivy League,
Yeah. I think that's a good transition. I think you see it more at the high school level. To be honest, they're probably got a bit more time on their hands, and it's just sort of you have football clubs all over the country who have these benchmarks, and and unfortunately. There are a ton of kids who might be otherwise athletic that will never reach those benchmarks, but could potentially like be good athletes maybe in another sport or something else, you know.
I always wondered what were are there a lot of challenges being a coach in the Ivy League? I remember as a young high school kid getting a call from some Ivy League schools that were like, we're probably, we don't do scholarships, we can help with financial aid, and like I'm sure you guys go out and recruit some people, and while the education's great and a lot of things, it's kind of tougher to get some high-level recruits just for the mere fact that you don't have the same options in terms of scholarships.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have a kid whose parents can see that to make it in pro football is very, very tough, but to get an education at Wharton Business and to get in is amazing, and you're gonna, the alumni base that we have to get kids jobs is incredible. So, even if you're a great player, man, it's tough to get in those pros, but if you can get in Wharton, it's even tougher. So, if you got somebody who's forward thinking and is a good athlete, you can get a kid like that. I think that's why strength conditioning is important in this league, because it can really be a leveler against, like put you on the same level as another team that may be better than you skill wise, or have scholarships if your kids are stronger. I was thinking about what you just said before. In the old days, maybe before the internet, I don't know, but everybody talked about bodybuilding a lot more. So, like when Arnold, kids don't talk about bodybuilding anymore. It used to be, well, I read Arnold did this, or I read Menser did that. See, because they're so different looking now. So Arnold was amazing and Franco, but you could sort of picture yourself being like that. You just thought that looked really cool. But these days, the way they look and the price of definition and all that stuff, kids don't even talk about it. Everybody used to have Muscle and Fitness or Muscle Builder Power or the new Flex, and none of these kids even talk.
Well, everyone's driving to like a weekend warrior. Even people who after school, even after collegiate sports, it really is. People want the element of competition.
I'm a lacrosse player from college, and then I coach some college ball. Cool. But I'm curious of how you approach sprint mechanics for your stick sports. Do you just still focus on run mechanics, or you just do you bring the stick out to sport, or just kind of?
Well, you're not allowed to. So there's certain times of the year you're not allowed to have the stick out there. And so, I have women's lacrosse, and hopefully if we win 3 more games, it'll be 9 championships in a row. They're amazing. And, I do all their conditioning and their running. We do a lot of change of direction stuff. We do a lot of tag drills, which is really fun for the athletes, but it simulates what they're doing. We do some sprint mechanics. So we test in the 40 and stuff. Kids want numbers. But does it really do any good just to focus on their start, to drop their 40 down a little bit? Not really. I teach them it because it teaches them some strength stuff that they're not used to being in that position. But I try to make it as similar to what they're going to do on the field. I don't care if they're in shape when they're 6 months out of the season. We have we have the rest periods, and they're just standing there. And if you came out, you'd be like, what are they doing? I'm like, I'm trying to get them faster. They don't have a game. We run a lot of stadium steps. But for those athletes, that's more of a strength thing, the stadium steps.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of try to be as specific as I can to the sport. Change of direction. We do a lot of awareness of where you are when you're moving. I want them to do, different types of mirror drills and things like that. I do at women's lacrosse.
Yeah.
So now the sprint mechanics, you would look at a track team and say, well, they're warming up the same as the track team because they're just warm up drills, but not during the workouts.
Yeah. Strength and conditioning for a women's lax team in college, and what we did was a lot of different reaction drills. So it was sound, it was vision, just stuff they were getting in practice. They just didn't know they were getting in practice. We had a lot of fun with that.
Right. Yeah, they're studs, man. I love coaching them. I have volleyball, field hockey, and women's lacrosse, and all those 3 teams. They have a lot of fun, and they work really hard. And not for long. I mean, they don't work. Our workouts, our weight workouts with them, maybe 30, 35 minutes of intense work. I mean, obviously you got the warm up and the foam roll and all that stuff, but man, they're not going for very long. They just want to know what's next. It's interesting.
And I try to keep in touch with as many college coaches as I can, just to keep those contacts. And then I had an interesting conversation with one guy recently, and it was about budget cuts. So then he did some digging, and they cut 10% of his budget, and he wanted to know where he was going, and it turned out to be the athletic training department for kind of the surgeries and then the doctor's appointments. And I thought that was crazy. It was like, why why doesn't he approach him to say, hey, maybe we can try to work on some strength and conditioning to prevent these injuries? Right. But it was just way, way too far above his head.
Right.
And I was curious, do you have any, do they come to you with these issues, or do they just say, hey, you're getting cut 10%? Or how do they approach that?
No, actually, here we have a new athletic director. A lot of our facilities are new, so we have a lot of focus on us. So, we sort of getting what we need right now, which I'm pleased about, because everybody is mandated to train. So all 33 sports are mandated to train. So we have 900 athletes. So, if you're going to really cut a lot of stuff away from that, the athletes aren't going to get, what they need as far as strength and conditioning or injury prevention. And, and this hasn't been everywhere I've gone, but we have a lot of our, trainers and physical therapists, they're sort of on board, with the strength and conditioning stuff. When they talk to the AD or whoever they talk to, the alumni, they say, man, this is something that we really need to have, or this is something that is helping us from getting hurt. So we're pretty fortunate.
And speaking of, sorry, go ahead, Tex.
I was just curious about how you take that ability to connect with female athletes, because one issue I had is they were thinking soreness was an injury and just a couple other just little things, and then it was hard for me to just connect just because I was coming from a different background.
Right. I always sit the team down, the freshmen, and say, what are your concerns? What are you worried about? And, of course, it's muscle growth. I explain how that's not going to happen. That they'll just be, we're fortunate we got a bod pod too, so they can't, if they gain any weight, we know if it's muscle or, adipose tissue. But, they have those concerns coming out of high school, because a lot of high schools, don't lift their female athletes. But it's not always a bad thing, because they don't have those bad habits, and they don't have those huge opinions on, oh man, we got a box squat and we got to, or whatever they did in high school, that I'm like, okay, well, there's merit to everything, but I really think we should probably go with this route, and, our girls are just like, okay, what are we doing? Just teach me how to do it. Once you address the concerns of that and say, I don't know, I was talking to a volleyball, I don't know if it's volleyball or somebody, I was like, if I came out there and played volleyball with you guys, my knees would be all skinned up. I'd be like, man, I'm all skinned up. What do I do? And they're like, oh yeah, it's part of it. Well, it's sort of like the weight room. That soreness is part of it. It's just that I've been doing it since I was, 10 years old, and you haven't. So you just got to get used to it, just like I would have to get used to your sport.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a really excellent illusion. I think that'll be like a really good takeaway for some people who do sort of struggle with, like Tex was saying, sometimes females are just less familiar when they're a novice. Really, any novice athlete, it doesn't have to be female, it could be anybody, and inside you're screaming like, stop being such a fucking pussy, but really, like, you can't say that to somebody when you're trying to make them fall in love with the strength and conditioning portion, So you have to be a little more tactful, and I think your approach is like spot on.
Well, it's a learned thing, definitely. We talk about pushing through a rep. That is such a learned thing. You'll see a kid miss a squat when they're halfway up, and you're like, oh man, you just get them to get that one time. They'll realize that if you keep pushing, it's going to go. But it's definitely learned. It's hundreds of reps. It's not something that's going to happen the first day. It's
that is.
Spend a lot of time with them.
That's a really great point. And I guess just to kind of circle back a little bit, is there anything you do with your athletes when they're first coming to you that is like your go-to assessment type thing? I mean, that is such a broad, sweeping question. I realize that, but like, do you have something that's or like a handful of tools where you're like, I can see a hole in the training right here, or something?
Well, I've done it for so long that and Tex, this, and John, everybody knows this, that if you watch a kid squat right away, you can tell if he's got something going on.
Sure.
And you can correct him, and you can say, well, you know what? I mean, I had a kid, a freshman, and I had just come off of back surgery, and I knew exactly what was going on with his body, and sent him to the trainer, and I was like, there's something going on with this kid. But fortunately, usually I start everybody off with the bar, and we check out everything. We teach everybody's form, because everybody's ego is so big when they come out of high school. I got to impress the coach. Well, you're not going to impress me starting with the bar. But just check out that, and then we have a force plate that we have from actually, I think one of John's former strength coaches at Cal Davis, Phil Wagner, invented this force plate that measures, without going into it a whole bunch, your load, explode, and drive. And figure out where their strengths and weaknesses are from this measurement after doing these 6 vertical jumps. It's amazing. The Falcons and the Jaguars have it too, and Kansas basketball. So now we're going to use that when the freshmen come in to figure out their deficiencies. And the good thing is that Phil actually used to work here also, the guy who invented it. So his prescription is always squat, deadlift, bench, press, all the stuff that we believe in to get these weaknesses up. So that's what we're going to use this year.
It's cool. The technology is really it's catching up, but I mean, there's nothing that can replace your 30 years experience, 30 plus years of just seeing thousands and thousands of athletes move too. So it's it works in conjunction with that coach's eye.
And also the basics. I remember a couple of years ago we had a guy come to the seminar that had owned a Parisi speed school.
Right. And
they had done a test where they had done the Parisi speed school, all their overspeed stuff with their treadmills with the Parisi speed or strength program, and then the guy had gone away and not used that strength program and actually used one of my programs, and they're basically the gains and the speed and everything that they'd done based on all their testing matrix far exceeded every other Parisi speed school by not just a little. It was double what everybody else did, and they came to this guy, and the guy showed up at the seminar because he's well, I was basically stealing your program. And I wanted to come to the seminar to talk about the results and figure out how the whole thing kind of fit together. And he's it's been pretty amazing. And I'm well, here's what you're going to do. I mean, it's push, pull, bench, squat, deadlift, clean. I mean, it was so basic. Right. And then he showed me what they did. And I'm well, how could you ever expect any of these young kids to get better when you only repeat a movement once every 30 days? And it just looked like a clusterfuck of humanity. I looked at this program and I was this gives me a headache. How could you expect a 14-year-old kid to really start even execute this program?
Right. And it's always
there's not enough swings at the ball.
Yeah. Well, they got to keep them interested too. I'm not saying Parisi's, but a lot of these kids come from having their own guy, and I'm why did you do all that stuff? And they're well, I don't know. He said, want to keep I guess he was trying to keep me interested. And I'm yeah, but he didn't make
God.
Fall,
it's
man.
It's not fucking dating, it's coaching.
It's a little different when you hand somebody a check. I think
Oh yeah.
A little different.
Oh yeah. Hey, let's talk a little bit about your life kind of outside of the gym. I mean, you're an author and an accomplished author, and what are some other what inspired you to write, and how does that play a role in your life?
I've always written. I've always written poems and written little short stories and just never published them. And then I just decided to put it all together one day and gave myself a deadline, and I wrote 500 words a night for a while. I just made myself do it. And John Schaefer, he at Strengthville, I know John knows him. He published the first book, and then he sort of took a different tact in stuff that he was focusing on. So I published the book of programs, and I had a little chapbook of fiction published. And then I write pretty much every day. I don't know. I've always felt a calling to do it, and I yearn for great books, man. I'll go forever to get a great book. I order hard to find Hemingway books or first edition stuff, and my mom was an English teacher, so she always had a rule that if any book I wanted, she would buy. My dad was go to the library, but to own a book is something different, and she really cultivated that. And I used to get criticized in school. All I read is sports stuff. Yeah, but I'm reading. I would hide the Inside Sports magazine or Sports Illustrated magazine, put it on the floor during math class and read it, and that's why I wasn't very good at math. But I always loved reading. So anyway, I just started writing, and I write a blog, and I don't get paid for any of that stuff. I just like doing it, and if it helps somebody, I get bored writing about training. I like more motivational stuff.
Yeah.
And I train hunting retrievers. I got 2 Labradors that are like my kids. And I train them, and I got a buddy who's a professional dog trainer, and I go down there all the time, and we go duck hunting and goose hunting, and training dogs is something I really, really love.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
What?
That's what a perfect morning would be, to do some squats, maybe hit the heavy bag, and then take your dogs out for a good goose or duck hunt. That would be it. I picture that all the time out in the woods somewhere, That's what.
Yeah.
That's my fantasy.
Yeah, are you're married, right, Jim? Because I was gonna say we could totally put on a whole dating thing here. This is Jim's ideal first date. He likes to take his dogs out. Okay.
Yeah, I'm married. I'm married. Happily married, yeah.
We'll scratch that idea.
There'd be a bunch of dudes that'd be like, man, I just want to go out in the woods with your dog and lift some weights. Sounds pretty good. Luke got all gassy.
I'm like, this sounds like
he's like, you got dogs?
We should get
Yeah. These dogs are amazing. These dogs, you know, I sit there and I got 3 boys too, but I sit there and I go in the basement with my dogs sometimes, just late at night, just hang out with them, man, because they don't expect anything out of you. They love you no matter what. They're always happy to see you.
What kind of labs are they?
Black Labradors.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice, beautiful. Yeah, like that's like the classic bird, like duck hunting, bird hunting dog, right?
I used to think that like that quote where it's like I want to be as good as my dog thinks I am, and like I used to have my first dog who's passed away was like that, and the dog I have now could care less. Every day I walk in, I'm like, yep, I'm just as good as he thinks I am. He can care less about me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's like dogs and cars, man. That's like
and guns.
And guns.
And lifting weights.
I love
and barbecue.
And twins. I'm sorry.
and you know, everybody has beards now. Man, I had a beard. That's everybody. I had a beard when I was in high school. I think I started shaving. So I just want to make that point out there to everybody that.
Back when it was creepy.
The only reason
when it was creepy.
The only reason to have a beard is to get a weak chin. So
no, that's
bullshit, John. That's bullshit.
That's what my dad told me. My dad told me the only reason a man can grow a beard is he has a weak chin. And he's like, you have a strong chin, you don't need a beard to hide your face.
That's not true. It's just can accentuate the nice chin.
Hey, it's not my fault. I mean, I don't know if Bobby has a weak chin. I've never seen his chin.
I've seen Bobby's chin. I'll tell you right now, it is not a weak chin. There's no part of Bobby that's weak.
Oh my gosh, what are you guys doing right now? You should get an apartment together.
I'm moving to Seattle.
Bobby did not win our composition 22 Jacks Street challenge. So obviously there was a little weakness.
We're starting to get off the rails a little bit, but before we do, I want to ask Jim if you have I know you said you've done a seminar with Jim Wendler. I'm sure that was just like one of many thick clinics or things that you've done, even probably with Rip. But, do you have anything coming up in, this year, over the summer, anything that you want people to know to get in touch with you? How can they read your some of your material as well?
It's bossbarbell.com, B-A-S. My Labrador is named after Boss Rutan. I'm like a huge Boss Rutan fan, so it's bossbarbell.com. And I just put up blogs. I got some books on sale, but I don't mean, I care if I sell them, but whatever. I'd rather just write and have people read it.
Yeah.
And then I don't really do seminars much. I have a couple of friends that own CrossFits. One in North Carolina. I usually go down there once a year and help her out with stuff. But as John knows, you're pretty busy at the university level. So when you get any time, I want to go train the dogs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, what's next on your training agenda? I mean, you've done so much. Are you getting to back to the kind of like the fighting stuff, or is it the knife?
I hit the bag pretty much every day, but I just do like a little conditioning drill in the bag. I just, me running is just so boring. I'll run a hill. I got a hill by my house. I'll run that. But the knife fighting stuff, and then I squat 3 or 4 times a week usually, light, heavy, medium. And when I'm just like, doing lap pulls and stuff is just so boring. But I can I can squat, press. I don't bench much anymore. I'll do dumbbell bench. And I just, every day I do something because it's such a stress. It's like a calling, and it's a stress. But I have to do something. I can't not do something every day.
Sure.
It's always funny to me when people say, well, I just got to get started. I'm like, what? What are you talking about, man?
And speaking of, training, what do you like to listen to when you're training? I know this is like kind of a cheesy question, but we always are curious because it gives a little insight on our guests. But what's kind of like, do you listen to music or anything like that? Or are you just purely?
Yeah, no, I mean, when I'm here at the university, my music is not, people don't really like my music very much because I like really like outlaw country or black metal. And it's not real popular, when they want to put on Kesha. But when I'm in my basement, I got a little squat rack in my basement. And, I like Hank Williams III, Southern Rock, Leonard Skinner, Molly Hatchet, all those people I grew up with, and then some black metal stuff. My buddy Phil has a band called Recluse. I mean, most people wouldn't like this kind of stuff, but War has a good album I like, if you know any of these bands. But a lot of black metal and a lot of, southern rock, hard country kind of stuff. I mean, always been a huge Hank Jr. fan. It's not a lot of beat or get you going kind of stuff. It's just sort of like, this is my little area here.
Hey, Jim, you're talking about black metal. Are you talking about some of the bands that Wendler listens to?
Yeah, and he knows a lot more about heavy metal than I do. I mean, I've gotten some tips from him on what to listen to.
Dude, it was awesome when Jim started name dropping these bands. It was like Rape Jesus.
I hate
God.
Sister Thrasher.
Yeah, it was like drinking blood through every orifice. I mean, it was like he's like throwing these names out. I'm like, what?
Yeah, I listen to anything by Phil Anselmo. Phil Anselmo, the lead singer of Pantera. I was a huge Pantera fan when I went and saw them. But then he had some side bands, and he still does.
Super
harder. Phil Anselmo and the Illegals. I like Down, and I've met Phil a couple times. I always get my wife for our anniversary. That's her present. We go backstage and get our picture taken with the band and do the VIP thing. So Phil's super cool, man.
Pantera's like one of my favorite bands.
What's that?
Like Pantera's like one of my all-time favorite bands. I've probably seen them like 5 times.
Oh yeah, man! And if you got Phil when he was sober back then, it was amazing.
The last time I saw him, they did a show with White Zombie.
Oh.
And that was in Milwaukee, and like the night before, the show was on a Saturday night. That Friday night, he like overdosed on heroin.
It was in Dallas, right?
And they were putting it out there like the show might be canceled, and he went out there the next day and he's like, yeah, I almost fucking died last night, but god damn it, I'm gonna come out here and fucking kick some ass. I can't miss the show. And they just started going right into it like it was just another day at the office.
Would you be able to tell if those dudes messed up though? Like, honestly.
You know that, Cal. You're a true fan.
Well.
If you've ever been to one of those shows, like people are literally like every lyric is coming out.
Oh yeah,
like,
I know.
It's like
I'm just
Springsteen
teasing.
fans, I can't believe he didn't sing this song.
John, do you have any Pantera stories?
Yeah, I saw.
John's like on everything. I mean, you talk about anything. He's like, oh yeah, so I was on this plane one time and I sat next to this guy. And
we'll do that. Yeah, my best was when I went on tour with Seven Dust, but we saw Pantera and the guys from Seven Dust were their drummer. Morgan was a big Eagles fan and used to live down the street from me in Clearwater, so I used to hang out with those guys. And
they first came out, I really, and then they went another way. But their first
their original stuff and their shows were pretty aggressive, but they kind of went in this more like commercialized. I mean, it was almost like I remember we were backstage and they were listening like the new Nickelback album.
Nickelback Aloud, man.
Yes.
I like Nickelback because everybody hates him, it's funny because they were listening to it, and I remember they were like, oh man, this new album, like they were like listening, all going through it, and they were like, man, we got to do something like this, and I remember thinking like, no, your stuff is hard, like leave it there, and we saw Pantera, and I want to say at Ozfest, but I might be wrong, but it was a Veterans Stadium, and. I also saw some killer shows at the Electric Factory.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I saw.
They got a bunch of dude, you're right up next to these people that you're like, oh, man, these are metal gods, and everybody doesn't give a shit, and you're just sitting there like right next to
dude, we saw
these guys.
Drowning Pool before the lead singer died of he was that was a Jägermeister tour, and the guy died drinking Jägermeister and snorting
not good cocaine.
For so it was Speedballs and Jägermeister, so he basically OD'd.
It's got to be one or the other. Everybody
knows that. I mean, but it was the Jägermeister sponsored the tour, and they were somehow like mixing cocaine, methamphetamine with Jägermeister, and either they were drinking it or I don't know what the fuck they were doing with it. I want to say it was with Steve Everett. We saw Pantera at Ozfest with Steve Everett, but I can't remember exactly. But I saw the last show Stone Temple, or one of the last shows Stone Temple Pilots ever did. It was at Electric Factory. I saw the Misfits.
Wow, at Danzig.
That's fucking cool, dude.
Yeah, we saw Misfits. We went and saw War and ended up going backstage. And Otis Horungus and those guys ended up coming to the Eagles games, and we hung out and drank beers with those guys.
You were a celebrity to them, and you were like, man, these are cool. Yeah, this is cool. Yeah.
And then we got invited to see Jack Johnson. And that was another one where we were like, we had just gone and hung out with like, no, but it's having like 1 week to see the Misfits and then like Drowning Pool, and then the next week like, hey, Jack Johnson wants to send you guys tickets. We're like, okay, who's that? And then we show up and we're like, Bubble Toast, awesome. That was like Philly at Electric Factory. It'd be like 1 week would be the Misfits, and next week would be Jack Johnson.
Jim, do you ever judge like your interns or new coaches based off what music they select?
Oh my God, they listen to awful music. I'm just old, man. They're all in their 20s. Well, I think one of them just turned 30. But one assistant, Steven's a Christian rapper. Believe in Steven. He's a well-known. I didn't know when I hired him because he always jokes, "You wouldn't have hired me if you knew that." My other two girl assistants, they like, I guess, Christy likes doom metal like Wendler does. She likes that. I don't know what Tracy listens to, but they usually pop is on, and I just, Fred Hatfield had a thing one time where you have to play music that's noxious to you to really focus, and so that's what I think. I think when I listen to that, it makes me stronger.
Yeah, I had a coach one time during my internships. He said that as soon as they walk in the first day, he judges them if they're going to make it or not based off how tight their shirt is. If it's too tight, they're in it for the wrong reasons, and they ain't going to make it.
Yeah, I make all my staff compete, man. You got to compete. I was telling Callie before we got on that, let's see, they've all done powerlift. They've all played sports, and Christy has the USAPL 198 record right now at the deadlift at 515. Tracy's got the Pennsylvania squat record at 402 or something. Steven's a USAPL top 10.
Strong broads.
Yeah, well, you got to – I don't call them that, but they –
technically, if you live in Philly, broads is acceptable.
It's a term of endearment.
Those girls.
Yeah.
Hey, I met these broads.
Maybe I can't say when the field hockey comes in, here comes the broads, but yeah, they're, I don't have this, I always looked up my coaches' bios, man. I was like, who'd you play for? And if they never played, I was like, I'm not listening to you. How strong are you? Or where, did you play anywhere in college? Were you any good? And so I want our kids to be able to say, can you show me how to do it? And every single one of my strength coaches get under the bar, or they can show you how to do everything that we ask them to do. I mean, I don't know where it became okay for coaches to look like crap and to not be able to do anything, but.
Dude, I got hit up last week to go and coach for a local high school. We got commissioned a couple years ago to go and install a strength program at a private high school, and they've done really well. I mean, we actually educated all of their PE teachers and everything in this program, and they went and implemented just like basically linear progression and some 5 to 10 minute short conditioning mixed modal workouts, and the kids did great. They all loved it, and they PE exploded, but that coach got fired. So I got called back and asked me about coming and kind of doing a reboot. And then I got a call from the head coach, or the head coach, once he figured out who I was, if I would be interested in coming and coaching offensive line.
Wow.
And I literally laughed and was like, I don't think I could do it. And the guy was like, well, how come? I mean, you played all these years. I'm like, I had a very unique skill set when I played, and I don't know if I could teach high school kids that skill set. And he was like, well, what was that skill set? I'm like, you got to be permanently in a bad mood and willing to do whatever it takes to win and do your job. And I don't necessarily know if that's something that I should be going and teaching.
No, you can't do that. It's different. It's different, John. It's all different now, buddy.
Yeah, it's like, I played for, Tom Cable, who was coach of the Raiders and nice offensive line coach for Seattle. He recruited me when I went to Cal, and I mean, we played a no-holds-barred type of game, and that game actually was really flourishing in the NFL. And since now, like, the NFL has kind of changed, they don't like guys like me anymore. But, yeah, it was pretty interesting. The guy was like, what do you think, this? And I'm like, I don't know if I would be any good at teaching a bunch of, like, white privileged kids, what I did. It was one of those things where I'm like, I'm much better to go and teach the lifts and do some strength conditioning stuff, because my patience to coach football players would be very, very small.
Right. Well, and it'd be tough because of effort, and the effort that you gave versus the effort that you see from a kid. And I coached high school for 2 years in Florida, which was a big deal. I actually taught football class in Florida. But
that's awesome.
It's Florida football is a big deal, and it was frustrating when they don't have that drive that the college kids have. And then the parents are involved, man. The parents, I mean, I left basically because I had a kid who missed a lift and he was a senior. And I said, don't plan on playing again. You missed your lift. Don't ever plan on playing. Don't pull on my, because I was a defensive coordinator. I said, don't pull on my shirt in the fourth quarter and say you want to play because you don't really care. Because I'd coached in college. I thought that was okay. And I guess he started crying and he got his mom. His mom came to the field and thought I was the athletic trainer. So she screamed at the athletic trainer, ripped him up and down. Didn't know who I was, And so the guy was like, what'd you do? So the head coach had to pull me aside. You can't say this. You can't say that. I was like, I'm out of here as soon as I can.
Yeah. It's, like there's this thing called intrinsic motivation. And it's like, if you don't have intrinsic motivation, then you need external punishment to force motivation. And it's like me just being like, you know what, you're going to do 1,000 yards of up downs. I'll come back in 3 months. Fucking go, or don't ever come back. And most of these kids, I mean, that was kind of the, like how much do you want it? And I think I don't know, maybe there's people out there, but like just from what we've dealt with in terms of like going out and working with high schools and going out and implementing programs and working with people, like a lot of people don't want to suffer and, don't really have that ability to suffer. And I think, if anything, that's the one thing where I've kind of really liked, and people shit talk the CrossFit, but I'm like, hey, at least you're getting people out to a situation where they're going to push past what they think is possible and actually suffer a little bit and are willing to like fucking go past where they think they can, because most people are afraid.
I know I was thinking about this earlier because one of the questions is what have you learned like under the bar and stuff. I learned so much more from football than I ever did lifting weights, and I love lifting weights, but man, I went to school at Gardner-Webb University, which we were NAIA Division I, and it's pretty good football. I mean, the guy next to me got kicked out of South Carolina. He started as a freshman at South Carolina. The linebacker behind me was from Carolina. It was all these misfits basically. And we had 3 practices a day, and the water was about 80 yards away. If you wanted the water, it was a PVC pipe with the water coming out, and there was just. You learned it's 90 degrees and it's 3 times a day, and it's just the way it is. And who cares, man? This is what you have to do. And you had 4 a.m. train. We had 4 o'clock train. If you had a hat on inside, if you had an earring on, if you talked back to a coach, if you talked back to a teacher, if you missed class, that kind of stuff, you got up at 4 a.m. That's it. You got up at 4 a.m. The coach followed you in a van. They had this course you ran around around the campus, and that was just the way it was. It's a lot different. It's a lot different now, for sure.
Well, I mean, I think all the best things that I learned in life probably came from football. I mean, and it actually wasn't playing in the NFL. It was actually all like the high school and kind of the college stuff. Once you get to the NFL, it's such a cutthroat business that it's like, like I just, other than, like don't be too friendly with people because they're not going to be there very long. That's what people learn in the NFL. But it's good. I'm sad, but. Yeah, I mean, like as much as I was like, oh, it'd be kind of neat. I realized I'm like, there's no way I could go out and work with a bunch of high school kids.
Dude, you're exactly right. I had talking about coaches, and they have such a huge influence on you, good or bad. I had a boys club coach, Mr. Miller. I wrote about this the other day on my blog. He was a Marine. Now, I was 80 pounds when I started playing with him, and all the way up until 8th grade, I played pretty much with him as my head coach, and he was fantastic. He used to say, gather us all in, and he'd say, boys, it's the day before the game. He'd say, have your mamas lock you in the closet and slide raw meat under the door. And we would just all look at him. And then he'd say, no bubble baths, no loose women. Now, 80 pounds, how old is that? My son's in 2nd grade, and he's like 90 pounds. So we were young. And so I get into the car. My dad was a professor at University of Maryland, but back then professors weren't rock stars. We were middle class, So I was like, Dad, Coach Miller said no loose women tonight. He's like, oh, okay. And no bubble baths. Uh-huh. And he said, well, tell me what's all this meaning? So I'll tell you about it later, son, when you get older. But you grew up around men like that. Now, there's no way the things that he said to me and my team.
Why? Yeah.
Oh, my God. It'd be on the front page of the paper. The things that were done to us.
Well, I always remember I was pretty young. I think I was in high school. And I had an old offensive line, D-line coach, a guy named Dwayne Lyons, and he had to be in his 70s. And he had played, for Bear Bryant, and growing up in West Texas, was an oil field kid. I mean, he was no teeth. Basically had a big coffee can that was dip spit stuck to his center console in his old 73 camper truck. And I remember he used to make comments like, big enough to go bear hunting with a switch. And I remember, like, bear hunting with a switch? What the fuck is this man talking about? Yeah. And, like, yeah, and I remember asking him, and he was so pissed off at me that how dare I not know what a switch is.
It's funny. When I was a kid, I used to walk around flexing, and my mom would say, "You look big enough to go bear hunting with a switch." And I never knew what the hell that was.
Yeah, and then you go bear hunting with a stick.
Sounds fucking badass. I didn't know what a switch was. But.
And like just a lot of the comments and like the punishment, and we, our head coach was an old Marine, and he, basically his practice he referred to as the Baton Death March. And I think of the things like just little things like we used to have our blitz was called like a jap, so like we got to jap them on this one. These are like if I were to say to any football player like, oh, like dude, this guy got
normal
japped.
Vernacular.
Yeah, like it's one of those things that was so ingrained in it. But like now I think about it, I'm like, there's no way I could go to a high school and work with kids.
Well, Jim, it's obvious you found your wheelhouse. It might not have been with high school kids, but you've certainly done an awesome job with where you're at. And I think, I'm most envious just because your network is pretty phenomenal, the people that you get to work with, and you get to work with so many different types of athletes, different types of sports, which has you... It just gives you that well-rounded capability, and we can hopefully all aspire to work with a myriad of different athletes, not just the hard hitters, work with the volleyball players, work with the lacrosse players. So I think it's awesome. I want to thank you personally for being a part of the podcast, taking time out of your busy day. I know you've got a couple assistants running around. You have someone, getting your dry cleaning, getting you coffee.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, they would look at me like, what? Nah, but I appreciate you having me on. It's been fun. I love doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, we definitely look forward to having you on again. I'm sure that there's 1,000 more stories we could hear between your experiences.
We'll definitely be back in the Philly area. And, we'll definitely try to hook up and meet in person after, basically living across the street from your work for all these years. And it's sad that we didn't get to meet each other sooner.
Yeah,
likewise. I can't wait. That'd be great.
Cool. Thanks, Coach.
All righty.
Thanks, Coach.
Take it easy. Bye. Now it's time for you to empower your performance. To get a hold of Jim's writings, including Steel Reflections and a number of great blog posts and publications, visit www.basbarbell.com. That's BASbarbell.com. Here you'll find motivating pieces and be able to track Jim's ongoing introspections about the world of strength and conditioning. Ladies and gentlemen, Wade's Army's 30-day campaign is still in full effect until the end of April. Here is how you can get involved and earn your very own limited edition Wade's Army t-shirt before it's too late.
What's up, Power Athlete Nation? Throughout the month of April, Wade's Army will be launching a campaign to financially support families in the fight against neuroblastoma. While exciting breakthroughs are being made on the neuroblastoma research front, most families begin the fight with the current standard treatment. Treatment is costly, and combining this burden with the emotional toll of the child's fight with cancer is almost too much for a family to fathom. The mission of 30 Days for Wade extends well past awareness or funding research. We are connecting with families that need our help and providing them with financial assistance. For this campaign, we feature the limited edition cancer-kicking brand new Wade's Army uniform, available in all youth and adult sizes, as well as the Wade's Army morale patch for your ruck or cap. Please join the fight against neuroblastoma and help us kapow cancer. You can find out more at wadesarmy.org.
Speaking of Super Troopers 2, in light of the recent popularity of facial hair, will beards become the new mustache? And if so, will Rabbit finally grow one, or will he dish out another lame excuse like, oh, I don't know?
My dad told me the only reason a man can grow a beard is he has a weak chin.
Until next time, bye!